Adolf Hitler was born on April 20th, 1889 in Braunau am Inn, a town in Austria-Hungary near the border with Germany. He was the fourth of 6 children. Adolf had a quite normal infancy. His father, Alois Hitler, worked in a customs bureau. His mother was Clara Polzel. Hitler had a passion for the picture. He applied for admission to the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna, but was rejected twice. In 1913, at the age of 24, he moved to Munich in Germany. During the First World War, he fought in the German army. Then, in 1919, Hitler joined the German Workers' Party, quickly becoming the leader. Under his leadership, the Nazi Party managed to take power, and Hitler became Chancellor of Germany on January 30th, 1933. But what if Hitler had become an artist and never joined the Nazi Party? In August 1914, at the outbreak of World War I, Hitler voluntarily enlisted in the Bavarian army. But allowing Hitler to serve in the German army was an administrative error, because Hitler was an Austrian citizen. In this timeline, in 1914, Adolf Hitler does not join the German army, and the Bavarian police send him back to Salzburg in Austria. Once the war broke out, he will be drafted in the Austrian army. Then he would probably have been sent east, where most of the Austrian army was located, and fought against the Russians. The First World War ends in 1918 with the defeat of the Central Empires, Germany and Austria-Hungary. In Germany, after the abdication of Kaiser Wilhelm II, a republic is proclaimed. The first president is Friedrich Ebert. This is the beginning of the Weimar Republic. In 1919, Austria also becomes a republic. Michael Hainisch is the first federal president. Hitler survives the war and moves to Vienna, where he lived before the war. Life in Austria in 1920 is difficult. They have lost many of their most important economic regions. Austria can barely support itself with food and does not have a developed industrial base. There is high inflation and money is spent as soon as it is acquired. A lifetime of savings accumulated before the crisis would not buy a loaf of bread. After being discharged from the Austrian army, Hitler, who has not even finished secondary school, finds himself without a job. He quickly runs out of money. His mother and father died before 1907. He earns some money as a casual worker, but his passion is painting. He still dreams of one day being admitted to the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna. Hitler tries to sell watercolors of views of Vienna, but it is difficult to sell paintings in post-war Austria, where half the population is unemployed. He is forced to live a bohemian life as a homeless man, living on the streets as a beggar, sleeping on park benches, in doorways, and train stations, relying on charitable organizations for food. Vienna had a huge amount of homeless people during this period. In winter 1919, Hitler enters an Asil für Obdachlos, asylum for the homeless, in the suburb of Wien. Hitler's day is to leave the shelter at 9 a.m. and take a long walk to St. Catherine's Convent to queue for the soup distributed by the nuns. Then he heads to the train station to find some comfort from the cold. In the afternoon, he tries to have some food from the Salvation Army before returning to the homeless shelter. His bed is a cot in a group dormitory. To raise some money, he even sells his clothes, including his coat. But he does not sell his art materials and continues to paint. In Germany, the young republic is in an almost constant economic and political crisis. Germany has lost its colonies and 13% of its former territory. 2 million German soldiers and 500,000 civilians have died, many of them from disease and starvation. The Treaty of Versailles has imposed harsh reparations on Germany. There is political extremism, bloody street battles between the left and supporters of the former empire, strikes, attempts to establish communist governments. The situation is chaotic. In January 1923, French and Belgian troops take control of the Rhineland, Germany's most productive industrial region. In the March 1920, Freikorps units under General von Luttwitz attempt to install an autocratic government. The putsch fails. Without the charisma and the speaking ability of Adolf Hitler, the German Workers' Party, the Nazi Party, remains a tiny party, one of many right-wing anti-Semitic movements that formed in that period. Drexler remains the party chairman. Hitler is still in Vienna and continues to paint. He does various jobs and occasionally manages to sell a few paintings, earning enough to avoid starving. Hitler's career as a painter is often the subject of irony, but contrary to what is said, he was not a bad artist. Everyone focuses on the first works where there are mistakes and technical errors. But this is very normal. He was young and inexperienced. It takes time and practice to become good without teachers. The very first works are quite insignificant. They look like those of a child, but it's a start. Little by little, progress is beginning to be seen. The first portraits are ugly. Hitler was rejected from the academy for his poor ability to draw faces. He is gradually improving. This is his mother. He also loved landscapes, although he wasn't very good at it at first. Progress is starting to show. These are the most mature works. Color and proportion work well. This is also beautiful. There are many fakes around, but here the signature is authentic. He still made mistakes. In some places the perspective is wrong and blurry. But in my bedroom I would rather put this picture, instead of this nonsense made by a painter of the same period that some call genius. Hitler wanders all over Wien selling his paintings and postcards wherever he could. After a while, Hitler knows what sells best and cultivates a list of regular buyers. Now he has a business that provided him a relatively stable income. In February 1923, he rents a small room in the center of Vienna. It's only a small cabin measuring 2 meters by 3 meters. But the pleasure of finally having his own space should not be underestimated after long periods of staying in group dormitories. The price of the room per month is reasonable, about the same as he earns by selling a single painting. He can afford to undertake master's studies at the Academy of Fine Arts. Now he has good teachers, he learns new techniques. He has an agent who sells his works. He presents his works at many painting exhibitions. By 1924, the German Republic enjoys relative prosperity, a growing economy, and a consequent decrease in political unrest. A new currency, the Rentenmark, is introduced. Germany joins the League of Nations, marking its reintegration into the international community. After the death of Ebert, at the beginning of 1925, Paul von Hindenburg is the new Reich president. He is an old-style monarchist conservative, with little love for the Republic. The German political condition remains unstable. The problem is that after an election, the political party that won the election must form a new government, while the president of the Republic chose a chancellor to lead the government. But Reichstag uses a proportional representation. The result is a large number of parties, none of which will reach a majority. So more parties has to agree to form a coalition. But because most parties hated each other, any majority in parliament is often impossible. Between 1919 and 1933, there were 15 changes of chancellor, 24 governments, and 9 elections. The 1920s saw also a remarkable cultural renaissance in Germany. Art, literature, cinema, theater entered a phase of great creativity. Innovative street theater, cabaret scene, and jazz bands become very popular. The German artists are influenced by the new cultural movements, such as the Impressionist, Expressionist, the Dada movement, as well as the Cubists and Futurism. The young women wear makeup, short hair, smoke, and break with traditional rules. Berlin, the old imperial capital, is now the most liberal city. But not everyone, Hitler one of them, is happy with the changes taking place in Germany. Hitler thinks that Germany is betraying its traditional values, and looks with disgust Berlin, that has become a liberal hotbed of homosexuality and a mecca for cross-dressers and transsexuals. A person in Berlin could get cocaine almost anywhere. Prostitution is decriminalized, even males. Manna zu verkaufen means men forsehe. Hitler misses the old Germany of the Kaiser. But even Hitler would have been influenced in some way by cultural changes. Maybe he would have followed the New Objectivity, Neue Sachlichkeit. It was a movement that arose as a reaction against Expressionism, a return to order, also called Verism, a reference to the Roman classical Verism. In Austria, the political violence continues to escalate. Paramilitary political forces clash with each other. The left-wing Republikanischer Schutzbund on one side, and the right-wing Heimwehr on the other side. In 1927, during a political clash in Schattendorf, 2 people are killed, sparking large protests during which the Ministry of Justice building is set on fire. To restore order, the police kill 89 people. Adolf Hitler takes part in the clashes, on the right-wing side. The Golden Twenties finishes soon. In October 1929, the stock market in the United States crashes. The Great Depression begins. The impact in Germany is terrible because it depends heavily on American loans. Several major banks collapses, and by 1932, about 6 million Germans are unemployed. Social and political unrest resonates, and extremist political parties increase their votes. In the Reichstag elections of September 1930, the right-wing parties win 20% of the votes, but they are divided, often in competition with each other. There is the small DAP of Drexler, the Strasser's party that split from the DAP. But the most important right-wing party is the German National People's Party, conservative and monarchist. The Communist Party of Germany gains 10% of the votes. Any majority in the Reichstag is impossible, and the Chancellor Heinrich Brüning begins to govern by presidential decree, bypassing the Reichstag. President Decree, or Emergency Decree, provided for in the Article 48 of the Constitution of the Weimar Republic, allows the president to pass laws without the prior consent of the Reichstag. There are new elections in July 1932, and the right-wing National Conservative DNVP wins 25% of the vote, becoming the largest party in the Reichstag. Alfred Hugenberg, leader of the DNVP, is the new chancellor of a coalition government. Minister of Economics remains the good Hjalmar Schacht, president of the Reichsbank. Kurt von Schleicher is vice-chancellor, and has the role of Eminenzgreis. He is a retired army general and thinks democracy is an impediment, like almost all German politicians of the time, however. The first initiative is a public works program intended to counter the effects of the Great Depression, creating 2 million jobs by July 1933. Hindenburg dies on August 1934. The new president could be Franz von Papen, who was one of the advisor of Hindenburg and had his confidence. Von Papen is closely associated with the industrialist and land-owning classes and the military. Hugenberg continues to operate independently of parliament through the use of the emergency decree. The Reichstag is effectively eliminated as an active player in German politics. Every law opposed by the Reichstag is made into an emergency decree by von Papen. In some way, the monarchy has been recreated, with the Weimar president being a strong institution similar to the emperor. For sure, Germany politics will continue to be a mess. There are regular street battles between left and right, but Germany will not become a totalitarian regime as under Hitler, and in any case the Weimar Republic is now more stable and is able to implement effective economic reforms. In 1931, U.S. President Herbert Hoover secures an agreement among the Allies to postpone all international war debts, including German reparations. The payments will never restart. Signs of an economic recovery began to emerge in the United States by June 1932, and by 1930, the contraction phase of the world economy has come to an end. The German economy begins a robust cyclical recovery, bringing consent to German government and reducing the appeal of extremist parties. The number of unemployed fall from 6 million to fewer than 1 million in 1936. The limitations on military spending in some way helps Germany, allowing enormous savings. Some people are beginning to think that Germany does not need a large army. Both Britain and France are war-weary, and they're happy to leave Germany alone. Poland is too weak to invade Germany. Belgium, Netherlands, Austria, Czechoslovakia, Luxembourg, Denmark even less. The ban on a German navy means easier relations with Britain. The naval arms race with London was a dumb idea from the start. The Germans begin to enjoy a boring, mildly embarrassing, but favorable peace. And for the first time in their history, they relax. Germany hosts the 1936 Olympic Games. Nothing major happens. In Austria, Engelbert Dollfuss takes power on May 1932. He suspends the parliament and establishes a fascist authoritarian government. It was the usual proceeding in Europe in the 30s. Spain, Greece, Hungary, Romania, Portugal, Poland. Hitler agrees with this new situation. He admires Mussolini and thinks that it would be great if Germany had someone like him. In July 1936 begins the Spanish Civil War, nationalist of Franco against leftists. Fascist Italy helps Franco with troops and planes, but Germany does not. Italy is keen to avoid prompting a wider European war, so its help is limited. The war continues, with Franco only controlling Spanish Morocco and some areas of Spain. But the growing communist dominance within the Republican government worries even part of the Republicans. On March 1939, in Madrid there is a military coup carried out by the military with support of the anarchists and the socialists. Its leader is the commander Segismundo Casado. Follows a peace with the nationalists. There are tractatives about Danzig. A German-owned and built railroad will in the future connect East Prussia with mainland Germany. Poland will receive economical concessions and other things like that. Hitler is still living in Vienna. He lives a comfortable and barely noteworthy life, away from active politics. Hitler was a talented painter, but he was not a genius. He was still painting according to the canons of early 19th century, while the first ferments of modern art appeared. Munch, Klimt, Matisse, Kandinsky. However, he has by now become a fairly successful professional painter. In 2025, he will have his own page on Wikipedia, like other painters of this period that you probably have never heard of. Kathy Kollwitz, Otto Dix, Max Beckmann, George Grosz, John Hartfield, Konrad Felix Muller, Christian Schad, Rudolf Schlichter. He would have a German Shepherd, his passion. He loves opera. Occasionally he writes drama critics for a newspaper. He would have met a woman. He would have a family and children. And in 1960 he will write his memories, The Story of a Painter. Now we arrive at the end. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union became increasingly aggressive. In our timeline, Stalin ambitions were limited by the powerful Nazi Germany and its gigantic army. In this timeline, the Soviets only have to deal with little countries and a disarmed Germany, still limited by the Treaty of Versailles. The Reichswehr has 100,000 men and no air force, submarines, large warships, and tanks. Without a threat in Germany, Stalin would have been less paranoid, limiting the purges of 1938. On November 1939, Soviet Union attacks Finland, and after initial difficulties, overcomes the Finnish defenses. Finland is forced to cede substantial border territories. On June 1940, the Red Army occupies Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania, incorporating them into the Soviet Union. In July 1940, the Soviet Union occupies Bessarabia. The Polish are so stupid that they believe the promises of the British and French, and begin to provoke the Soviets. There are incidents at the border. Russian minorities are harassed. In July 1941, Poland mobilizes, causing the attack of the Soviets. Britain and France declare war on Soviet Union. The Red Army defeats Poland with its superior military strength, especially in tanks and aircraft, despite suffering severe losses and initially making little headway. Then, without the wall of steel set up by the Axis armies, the Soviets easily dilate in the almost undefended German plans. Against the Red Army, the 100,000 men of the British Expeditionary Force are nothing, while most of the French army remains on the Maginot Line. December 1941, Japan takes advantage of the mess in Europe and attack at Pearl Harbor. The Second World War begins. Austria would have drawn into the war, as well Italy and most of Europe. What would have happened to Hitler? He would have enlisted voluntarily in the Austrian army to fight for what he considers his fatherland against communism and Slavs, two of the three things he hates the most. He was too old to be conscripted, but he could have joined the Landwehr, the national militia. Maybe he would have survived the war, I don't know. However, today you would know Adolf Hitler as a painter of 900 who fought for Austria in both world wars, lived a bohemian life, and wrote drama critics.